Morning, everybody. I guess for a little bit more context, for Siemens, I run their content collaboration and communications solution area in North America. If you're not familiar with Siemens, we're about 500,000 people, ninth largest company in the world by head count. We're in 190 countries in a lot of very highly regulated verticals such as healthcare, energy, automation and industrial equipment. And we deal with a wide range of issues, certainly a lot of litigation and compliance issues, as most global companies are dealing with today. In the course of this year alone, I've met with C-level executives from 71 different Fortune 500 companies. The last one was yesterday. And so I have, I think, a bit of a flavor of what's going on out in the market in a lot of these areas around governance and risk management. Both internally to Siemens, as we've dealt with it, but also with a wide range of companies. So I deal with companies all the way from discrete manufacturing, high tech, automotive, you name it. What I find very interesting is a lot of people in their vertical feel we're very different. If I'm a pharmaceutical company, well, I'm regulated by the FDA, so I'm different. Or if it's healthcare, well, Health and Human Services regulates me, so I'm different. That may be true, but there's a common theme across the board, and we're going to touch on some of that today. And those common themes can lead to some very effective common solutions and common approaches. And that's a lot of the guidance that we're giving companies today. So in this particular topic, which I'm finding very interesting, even though I'm very much a technology-focused person, these days I'm spending more time talking to general counsel than I am to CIOs. Or I'm introducing general counsel to their CIO and vice versa. It's kind of remarkable. I spent most of my career trying to bridge the gap between business and technology. And now I got to throw the legal people in the mix, and that's a three-way conversation of three people talking three completely different languages. So I feel like I work for the United Nations sometimes. So the point of the discussion this morning will be just kind of what's going on. What are we seeing, and what's causing some of the issues that are driving governance as a concern amongst people? Why should we care? So great, tell me what's going on, but now why should I do something about it? I see a tremendous amount of inertia, a tremendous amount of, I would even call it denial, on the part of many corporate executives. Things are changing so quickly that it's very easy to say, well, I'm either not going to deal with it or I'm not going to accept that this is going on, and that's becoming more and more and more, frankly, dangerous for companies to take that perspective. And then finally, what are some very tactical, tangible things that we can do to start helping to bridge this gap? One of the things I find many legal professionals are finding is that they're somewhat overwhelmed by it. Things are changing so quickly. Case law is coming out every single day that is game-changing to businesses and how they respond to this stuff. And I think legal is one of those professions that traditionally has not been quick to embrace technology or to necessarily embrace it effectively. So a little bit of guidance on how legal departments can move forward to help their organizations deal with some of these issues. So some of this content I went over, a few of you were here with the workshop 2 days ago, so there's a little bit of redundancy, but there is some new stuff. The context setting is the same, so that's why I thought it was relevant to show some of the same slides. I describe the scenario that we find ourselves in these days as a perfect storm scenario. It really is. There's so many forces that are hitting us all at once, and they multiply each other, the effect of each other. First off is this demand for collaboration and rich content. When I'm at home, I go on Google or I go on Bing, I get instant gratification. I'm looking for something, here it is, right? I get on Twitter or Facebook and I'm communicating with people all over the world instantaneously. Free as well. And so a lot of the response I'm hearing from businesses these days is, why can't I have that same experience when I'm at work? Why can't I get that at work? I hear that all the time. So when the business people are coming to IT or looking for guidance from legal, that's what's driving it. I want that same sort of instant access and ubiquity of information in the workplace. At the same time, I'm getting this absolutely gargantuan explosion of content, and I'll get to that in a moment. The scale and scope of how quickly the internet has taken over, how quickly it grows, and the rate of growth itself is accelerating beyond our ability to manage it. I think some of the discussions in the previous session were talking about how some of these processes could be automated or could be manual. They cannot be manual anymore. We simply, as it's the scale and scope, volume and velocity of how we work in business today is beyond human scale to manage. So we must automate. And then the challenge is, how do I do that effectively? We hear all the time, Obama loves this word transparency, right? And what they're saying there is you need to know exactly what's going on in your business every moment, and a regulator might show up tomorrow or a litigator, and they're going to want instant access to this piece of information. Back to my experience at home. Who can do that these days? given the complexity of our organizations and so forth. So achieving this idea of business transparency is going to be extraordinarily difficult. Because at the same time, the fourth force, privacy. Secure my intellectual property. How do I be transparent but opaque at the same time? Because that's effectively what this is saying, breaking up access rights and control access to information. Okay, so this is this perfect storm scenario. How do I balance these four forces that are all hitting me at exactly the same time? So let's quantify this a little bit. Scale and scope. So who knows what an exabyte is? Okay, so we start at kilo, mega, giga, tera, we're starting to get big, right? Then we get to peta. Most companies today are living in a petabyte world. Okay, that's a lot of content, but exabyte is what's coming next. And I'm literally talking to technology folks that are planning and architecting exabyte scale storage systems where they not only have to store an exabyte of data, they need to dynamically be able to search through it on demand to find one document, right? So what does an exabyte look like? Here's some examples. Of this presentation, 333 billion copies of this presentation. That's 75 for every man, woman, and child on the planet. Okay. If I took a digital camera and I took photos the size of my screen, I took a picture every second, I'd have to take those pictures for 158,000 years to create an exabyte of data. Okay. And the CEO of Google recently estimated, because we don't really know, that there's about 5,000 exabytes of content currently on the internet, but they expect that to double in the next 5 years. Okay, so tremendous amounts of information out there. And in fact, Google themselves admit that they've probably only indexed less than 0.1% of the content that's currently out there on the internet. And so we look at Google as this authority for getting information. They're barely touching what's out there. Okay. Volume and velocity. Have spoke with the CIO of a major bank, and they produce 5 terabytes of email a week. Recently talked to another bank that's doing 2 terabytes a day. So if we're talking about e-discovery, email is this new vehicle for litigation, and lawyers are going nuts trying to get their arms around the changes to FRCP, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. If I'm generating this much email, talk about needle in a haystack. Trying to find that one email that causes, that's relevant to a case. Yes?
150 megs a week. What is that?
For me, well, and I may be a bit of an outlier. I'm doing presentations and so forth very frequently. So I have a high volume of presentations. I personally archive everything I ever send or receive, and I put them in quarterly chunks. So every quarter I'm generating something like 4 or 5 gigabytes myself. So I may be a lot more prolific than some people, but I mean, these kind of numbers, and the thing is, this is a linear growth. If I'm worried about 7-year statute of limitations, just the email for these guys is going to be 1.6 petabytes. But that's assuming no growth. If we apply a little bit of growth, okay, 20% growth, these numbers are actually small because the growth is actually tracking with Moore's law, getting a doubling every 5 years. But all of a sudden, 1.6 climbs over 4 petabytes of email for these guys. Okay, it's a lot of email. Let's talk about regulations. There's a company that I work with that is boldly going where no one's gone before. They're attempting to actually capture and index every single law and regulation in the world for every country and every province, state, the EU, et cetera. Their intention is that they're trying this idea of automation again. They are actually attempting to automate the regulatory side of this problem. So if we look at some of the numbers that they're estimating, United States alone, 50,000. And then each state is about that size, so there's another 2.5 million. So if the scope of